Om Tat Sat. My humble prostrations to the all-pervading Brahman, to my worshipful Guruji, Swami Jyotirmayanandaji Maharaj, to sage Narada, and all other sages and saints, and to each of you, divine soul, watching today's satsang. So today we will be starting with Sutra number 37 from chapter 2, Glory of Supreme Devotion. This is from the Narada Bhakti Sutras. Commentary is by my worshipful Guruji, Swami Jyotirmayanandaji Maharaj, and narrated by myself, Swami Nikhilananda. So let's get started. Sutra number 37. It is Loke api Bhagavad Guna Shravana Kirtanat. Let's repeat. Loke api Bhagavad Guna Shravana Kirtanat. This means, even while living in the world, one develops devotion by listening to and singing the glories and attributes of God. So this is another very profound sutra meant for serious devotees who want to immerse themselves in the glory of devotion. So this sutra we will cover in 4 parts because it is quite deep, and so I hope you enjoy it like nectar, like you're enjoying your favorite dessert. And so we will get started with the initial part, and then we will cover this sutra. There is no rush to cover these things. What's more important is that we enjoy, understand, and comprehend and start practicing some of these deep things that Sage Narada and our Guruji, they are guiding us. So the explanation is that a devotee must constantly adore the divine self. That divine self is within you. It's within your own heart. You don't have to look for it anywhere. Even while engaged in your daily duties, we must perform and maintain an unbroken stream of devotion by listening to divine glories and attributes and singing the divine praises. That means instead of using your time in idle news or wasteful activities, you can chant bhajans, you can have something in YouTube while you're washing your dishes, some glorious kirtan or something that gives you joy. The divine self is called Bhagavan. Bhagavan, because he is endowed with 6 prominent bhagas. Bhagas means divisions or attributes. So God has 6 attributes, and they are dharma, which is of course the righteousness principle, infinite virtue. He also has yasha, which means infinite glory. And the third one is vairagya, which means infinite dispassion. Again, remember, these are the attributes of God, so there is no limit to these things. The fourth one is called bala or power, infinite power. And then the fifth one is Lakshmi or Shri, that is infinite prosperity. And finally, the sixth one is Aishwarya, which means infinite lordliness. That's why we call Bhagavan. And therefore, some of the even some sages and saints who have reached that state, we call them Bhagavan, because it's a sign of respect that they have connected themselves to the same attributes also. So just as a mother engages in various activities yet maintains a ceaseless remembrance of her child, so too should a devotee maintain an inner current of spiritual love while performing various duties in daily life. So while you're doing your dishes, you're doing your regular chores or whatever, inwardly you can continue to chant your japa or think of the divine self. That's the undercurrent. Just as a miser keeps his mind ever revolving around his wealth, so too a devotee must maintain a secret internal flow of mind towards the divine self, who is the treasure of all treasures. And that is the depth of this sutra, a devotee should keep company with persons who are congenial to spiritual movement. And this is where the glory of satsanga comes in. Sat means truth, sangha means association. So when you are associating with truth, with spiritual people, then you are in satsanga. So instead of indulging in vain worldly talks, gossip, etc., we can promote conversations that uplift the mind and enable one to become devoted to the divine self, just like we are doing right now. It is transferring this holy message and you are receiving it. So this is the satsanga that sages and saints talk about. If such company is not possible, then one can create an inner atmosphere of devotional sentiment, thus keeping oneself shielded from influences of the worldly mind. So the main focus is to try to not get too entangled in the world, because as soon as you go in the world, you get dragged down to the worldly level, which is rajas, and we want to be in sattva or purity. So shravana is the second part, which is listening. So shravana consists in listening to the teachings of scriptures that explain the nature of the divine self, as well as the glorious exploits of divine incarnations such as Rama, Krishna, etc. There is nothing more delightful in the world for an aspirant who has developed a taste for listening to these teachings from sages and saints. Then you crave for these teachings. These teachings become like your daily routine, your nectar, and without it you feel incomplete. And if that has happened to you, then God has blessed you. You are very, very fortunate. This taste gradually works wonders, because then it starts to change your psyche. It changes the inside and makes you more and more pure. It purifies the mind and very effectively leads to the attainment of para-bhakti. Remember, we are trying to bridge that gap between bhakti alone and para-bhakti. Bhakti is just devotion, but para-bhakti is supreme devotion. So we have to do extraordinary things. We have to totally spiritualize our life if we want to get to that state. So, scriptures such as Ramayana, Srimad Bhagavad Puran, Mahabharata, Bhagavad Gita, they are all highly suited for the practice of constant listening. The more we listen, the more we understand. And this is profound philosophy in action. Every question of an earnest spiritual aspirant has been answered in these deep scriptures. The Srimad Bhagavad Puran speaks of King Parikshit, who attained liberation by the mere force of listening to the glorious stories of Lord Krishna. Even today, there are many places that do the 7-day, it's called the Saptaha Parayan. Saptah means 1 week, the 7-day listening of this scripture called Srimad Bhagavat. It is said that Lord Hanuman also so enjoys listening to Rama's stories that wherever there is Ramayana, he is a Chiranjeevi, which means he doesn't die. He's constantly here in the atmosphere. So whenever you are chanting Ramayana with devotion or Hanuman Chalisa, he himself is there in invisible form. He has that multiplicity capacity. So because he enjoys the bhajan so much. So a devotee must also gain insight into the science of mantra japa. So now we are talking about mantra japa, which is a very important aspect for a serious spiritual aspirant. It is basically repetition of a divine name. Mantra japa. Man is mananat trayate iti mantraha. Man means mind. So to control the mind and to put it into a certain pattern, this repetition of the divine name is most infallible method of controlling the mind and removing the obstacles from the spiritual path. The scriptures abound with its glories, mantra japa. It is the simplest and most effective tool for a devotee on his way to spiritual liberation. This is so powerful yet so simple that most people don't understand how profound this simple effective technique is. So an aspirant receives initiation into a mantra. That's a mystic formula and that has a powerful influence on one's inner life. But it has to be received from a spiritual preceptor or a guru who knows about spirituality, who is walking on that path and who can guide you and moreover connect you to the chain of the Guru Shishya lineage, the parampara. It's called the Guru Shishya parampara. For example, our Guru Shishya parampara goes all the way to Adi Guru Shankaracharya and Shankara, and so it is a very well respected, well known pratha, and that Sri Shankaracharya ji had started for the sannyasis. So for example, that is one example. And then but if it is coming from an authentic source, that's when you practice with faith and repetition with the help of a mala. A mala is a rosary that has the 108 beads. So the Guru gives you the mantra and he blesses you, but it's also supported by the entire lineage that protects the new aspirant and brings him into the fold. So that's why just chanting by yourself, although helpful, it is much more profound when you follow the path through a proper guru. Just like if you want to become a doctor, you have to be under the guidance of proper instructors, proper teachers, learn how to do surgeries under their guidance. You can't do it on your own. Much similarly, spiritual practice is also extremely complex. There are many pitfalls. There is the unknown. So therefore you need a guru or a spiritual guide on your path, on this holy path. So instead of mere verbal or mental repetitions as in japa, kirtana can also be sung. The fourth one is kirtana. So when you start singing the mantra, it becomes kirtan. Otherwise it's japa. Like I say Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, that's a mantra. But if I chant Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. So I have converted it into a melody and we can then chant along, and when other people chant along also it becomes kirtan. So it becomes singing the divine praises and is the most effective means of elevating the masses and raising the spiritual standard of society. So instead of wasting time over useless political news or things that are constantly dragging us into the world, we can create inner energy by chanting kirtan, etc. In this context, kirtan refers to any group or effort to glorify the divine self. So basically we are singing praises of God, we are glorifying the self within, and more specifically it refers to the verbal chanting of mantras and singing the divine glories, just like we just explained. So in order to attain success in japa and kirtana, there are 4 types of obstacles that must be negated. They are called anarthas. Anartha means something inauspicious or an obstacle, and we will cover those in tomorrow's satsang. This is Swami Nikhilananda. Om Tat Sat.